Hi guys, welcome. I'm here with James Abrams today, and just want to thank you for coming and give you a chance to introduce yourself.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's my pleasure to be here.
Absolutely.
Should I do it to you?
You can do it. You can just tell me. Tell me, as if I
Yeah,
never
so
met.
I'm James Abrams. I'm a psychotherapist practicing in Denver. I'm in private practice. I specialize in working with addiction and other sort of compulsive behaviors, that kind of thing, and then particularly with young people, so like 11 to about 30, 35, you know, or
11 to
sometimes
35, okay.
60.
Or so-
You know how it goes.
Trying to stay young.
Yeah.
But that's your focus is on that younger age bracket.
Yeah.
But you're not exclusive.
I'll work with people who come to me, but
Okay.
yeah, my focus is on youngins.
Okay,
Yeah.
right on. And I'm gonna dive right into just get to know you a little bit. As we were talking about before, we started all these cameras and things. That it takes, people don't come to this for the money. It takes passion, it takes heart to be a therapist. And so I'm curious, kind of where that passion was first ignited, or kind of what led you to the point of wanting to be a therapist.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to say like an exact moment.
Yeah.
To be perfectly honest, it feels like kind of a lifelong progression. Like I
Of
can
course,
see
yeah.
like clear moments in my history. But I mean, basically, when I was growing up, I went through some hard times, and like I had a therapist, and that was really helpful for me.
Okay.
And like I had a lot of my friends were just really in a bad place at various points throughout middle and high school, and like I just always wanted to be in the mix. Like it's hard to say really. I just like when other people were distancing from, like if someone's having a problem and it's
Yeah.
like kind of intense for a 14-year-old to deal with,
Yeah.
I just wanted to get closer to it. It really just comes from like when I see people in pain, I just have to try and help.
You want to just be there with their pain.
Yeah, pretty simple, Maybe it comes from empathy,
Yeah.
right? Of just like it helps me when people do that, so I would like to, pay it forward a little bit.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So
And so when did you start seeing a therapist?
when I was 13, I
Okay.
think.
Yeah, that's pretty young. For
Yeah.
most people.
Yeah, yeah, I had a friend who committed suicide when she was 13, and so like our entire friend group was just kind of like time to go get therapy.
Yeah.
It was pretty intense.
And you were pretty close to that person.
Yeah, I was really close with her. So yeah,
That's tough.
yeah. I hope that's not too much to drop
No,
on me.
no, not at all. I mean, like you said, I love connecting to that empathy, that vulnerability of someone's story. For me, it feels much more real. When I'm just looking at someone's accolades, then I'm like, who is this person even? Is this just
Right.
And we're not robots, and especially not in this profession. And so I think that people have their own stories of and experiences, and if you didn't have them, then you probably would be a shitty therapist.
Yeah, I'm not saying you have to be
Yeah.
wounded, but it helps.
to understand where people are coming from.
Yeah, and that's, I mean, for anyone listening to this who's into like that whole Jungian approach,
Okay.
it's the wounded healer archetype. Right?
Can you just say a little bit more for people who aren't as familiar with that?
It's hard to get into exactly, but
Yeah.
that sort of Jungian thing of like there's certain archetypes within our culture that everybody sort of fits themselves to one or a few of them, as best they can. Obviously, no one's a perfect fit for the archetype.
Right.
Because it's a superhuman kind of thing.
Okay.
But you sort of pursue different approaches. It's like different life paths. The wounded healer one is basically this idea that like people who have wounds that haven't necessarily closed or took a lot of effort to close, like
Yeah.
in the effort they took to close that wound, and that they saw others expending to close that wound, they learn how to extend that to other people. And by working with other people in pain, also heal their own.
Yeah, yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. I think
I'm
Jung
sure it has
was,
its
was onto some
limitations.
stuff. Yeah, it's a little goofy. We're not all part of like a fairy tale, but I think there's some wisdom in it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
cool. And so do you think that because a lot of your struggles kind of started at that more adolescent phase, and almost, right at the beginning of puberty, I'm assuming, that is a reason why you're drawn to that, working with that younger age group?
I mean, I want to say no, because I don't want to be analyzed, but almost certainly, right?
Right.
It seems pretty likely. Yeah, I mean, one of the things that, like, when people ask me, like, why do you want to work with teens? Because so many people really don't.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
It just comes down to, like, I get it. Like, I say this, and I'm not sure, this might not speak well of me, but, like, I like spending time with teens. Like, I'm still ready to laugh at as many fart jokes as they want to tell me,
Right.
But also, like, when they get into, like, the pain of growing up, which I think is tremendous, right? And, these people they've, oceans of hormones rolling through their bodies. I understand what they mean. It's not a stretch for me, like, to be working with a teen and have them say, like, my friend, like, I passed my friend in the hallway and I said hi, and they, like, looked away, and I spent the rest of the day hyperventilating. I get it.
Yeah.
And, like, to an adult, maybe you've learned the skills to be like, well, then I'm sure they were just busy, or they didn't notice me or whatever. But, like, I can still understand, when people are going through that and they don't know how to self-regulate, how scary that can be. Like, high school is a very competitive place, and when you suddenly think, like, the team that you were on, you're not on anymore, that's a very scary situation to be in.
Yeah, yeah, that's a big deal.
Yeah.
Yeah, it sounds like, so you can get it, and you can validate that experience for them.
Yeah.
In a way that maybe a lot of adults find to be like, oh, you're being petty, or
Yeah.
and you're able to relate to that.
Right, and that's just the beginning part of it too, right? Because, like, eventually you do have to lead them to, I probably wouldn't say you're being petty.
No, I'm saying that the average adult might have that response to a teenager, talking about their experience of someone not saying hi to them in the hallway, as like, you're making a big deal out of nothing, whereas you can come alongside them and say, I get that experience, and let's work with how to manage that if that happens again.
Yeah, and I mean, I kind of get it from the adult side too. It's like, I think those experiences are so much stronger and often more painful than really anything else that we go through ever again. I mean, just chemically speaking, we're just not going to have that much energy for emotions at any other point in our life. I think most people don't want to remember it. Like, they don't want to empathize with that, because, like, they're like, that's done. I'm out. I got out clean. I'm a functioning human.
Right.
Grown up, like, they don't want to go back. But it's like, it's hard. Teens need guidance.
Yeah.
Right. Most people try and offer teens protection, but what they need is guidance, which means you have to be in there with them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, when you're working with teens, this is again a really broad question, but is there a certain approach that you found to be most effective, or that you gravitate towards?
Yeah. So there's, and I'm a little biased in this. I find that what I was trained in is really effective.
It's funny how that works.
Imagine that. So I was trained in mindfulness.
Okay.
And there's a lot of approaches to mindfulness. The one I got out of it was, don't respond to panic with panic. Right?
Okay.
Like, the main sort of teaching of my school, Naropa University, was hold your seat.
Okay.
people will try and knock you out of it. Stay strong, stay dignified, stay upright.
Okay.
You know, like while you still receive what they're giving you.
Okay.
And so there's been some research done by Dr. I hope I'm not getting her name wrong, Adriana Galvan at UCLA.
Okay.
She did a brain study on 3 different age groups, so children, teens, adults. And she was studying basically executive function, so your ability to resist temptation, as well as sort of your pleasure response, you know, how stimulated you get by things that are exciting to you. And what she expected was, you know, to see sort of like a downward trend in pleasure response from childhood to adulthood, right? And then an upward trend in executive stimulus from childhood to adulthood.
Okay.
And the results were actually pretty surprising. So what she found was that children and adults actually have the same pleasure response to positive external stimulus. You know, she thought kids would be way higher because, you know, look at kids. They're
So
running
excited
around like
about
crazy
things,
people. Yeah. And so what she found, the difference between kids and adults is that adults have a much more functioning executive function in their brain. And that's, we pretty much knew that part, but no one expected them to have the same pleasure stimulus. What she also found was that teens, compared to kids and adults, their pleasure stimulus is off the charts,
Okay.
right?
Interesting.
And their executive function is like a little higher than kids. Like they're starting to develop that function. So, you know, all this is to say, like, what people believe about teens is true.
Right.
And it leads them into really intense situations, you know, like, and what you can take from it is that there's a biological function in the teenage brain to take risks and make mistakes.
Yeah.
You know, chase things that you think are going to make you happy, like at a way higher level than you ever have before or ever will again. And you don't really have the tools to deal with that, right?
Because the executive functioning isn't where it is for adults.
Exactly. You don't have the quality control on your own desires and impulses.
Right.
So it points to a thing about child rearing during the teenage years, and this sort of goes back to what I was saying before about protection versus guidance. People see teens making mistakes all the time. I mean, they're just, you know, they're ruled by these desires, and they want to say, you know, like parents think back about the mistakes they made, and they're like, I don't want my kids to make the same mistake.
Yeah.
Makes perfect sense. However, it may be the case that part of the development of executive function is intimately tied to this super high pleasure response, right? So they have to make mistakes.
Okay.
Right, so often you see this play out. I'll have parents call me and like, they're like, you know, my kid's going crazy, and now like, you know, I've taken away the phone, I've taken away the computer, they have no TV access, they're grounded, you know, they can't go out on weekends, nothing's working. And it's like, well, that's true, because it can't, because the kids, like their brain is hijacked right now.
Yeah.
And so what I can do is react to these kids making mistakes and like, you know, I care about my clients. When a kid's telling me they're going through a very hard time, like my heart's breaking for them. Absolutely. But I know it's not my job to fix that. I know it's not my job to protect them from it. It's my job to help guide them through it so they learn how to fix it and protect themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So that's the mindfulness piece. You know?
So, okay, just to kind of summarize, make sure that I understand this.
That was a lot at once.
Yeah, no, it's good. And I want to check out that study. So just in general, so adults have higher executive functioning than children and the same pleasure response. But adolescents have a much higher pleasure response but a more childlike level of executive functioning.
Yeah, exactly.
And so it's going to be harder for them to, in the moment, to override that pleasure response with the right thing to do, the rational choices.
Right. They're going to chase a lot more desires.
And so instead of trying to protect them from that, your approach is to accept that they're going to make a lot of mistakes and do some things that are inordinately risky, and then, but how can they learn from those situations?
Right.
And how does the traditional sense of mindfulness in terms of, There's a lot of things when most people think mindfulness, they think like, I am aware that my knee hurts right now, and I'm present with that in the moment.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's really not any fancier than that.
Okay.
It's like, I've got the kid sitting across from me, and, he's talking about how, his heart's been broken by the last 3, people he attempted to date. And, it's been about a week and a half since the last one, and now he's met a new one.
Yeah.
And I'm feeling like my anxiety system is lit up like a Christmas tree, And like I want to just walk across the room and just shake him and be like, "Don't do it, man. You don't have to do this. If you could wait, you could take care of yourself. You could take a Epsom salt bath with some scented candles or whatever." And
Sounds lovely.
The sort of thing that like an adult would do.
Yeah.
Which is to be able to say like, okay, I'm rushing into things and I'm getting myself hurt. Maybe I should slow down and reevaluate and learn some stuff. The teen won't do it. I, as an adult, want to shout from the rooftops, like, this is what you should do. And that's what his parents are doing.
Yeah, and it's not working. That's why they're in therapy,
right.
I'm assuming.
But it's my anxiety is telling me to do that. But, like, my actual wisdom is telling me, like, that's not the right intervention for this kid. It's not going to work. If it was going to, it would have worked when his parents tried it, right? Or when his teacher tried it, or when his friend suggested it. Everyone in his life is telling him, slow down, you're hurting yourself. I have to be able to not react to that same kind of anxiety that I'm getting off of him, right? So that I can give him an intervention that actually is helpful.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the mindfulness piece, like to recognize, like, I'm feeling this incredible desire to reach in and fix.
Mm-hmm.
But I know that doesn't actually work.
And so it's really your own mindfulness practice that kind of comes to bear in the session, and then you're role modeling that.
Yeah.
Do you even, in some cases, like walk them through that? How you're like, I'm noticing this urge to want to tell you what to do, and
yeah, sometimes it depends. It's hard to say, like, give a blanket statement of how. I
understand that.
Yeah.
That was just what popped into my mind.
But sometimes, right, like if the relationship's good enough, like if we've been working together for a while, I will say, like, here's, what's going on for me, I don't think that's going to work for you. And they're like, nope. And then I just say, one day, kid, one day.
And something else that sounds like it's pretty new for you, that you've started doing with some of your youngest clients is this this role-playing game. Is it Dungeons and Dragons?
Yeah.
Group.
Yeah.
And so that sounds really interesting, and kind of, it's different than other things that I've heard. And so that's why I wanted to learn more about it.
Yeah. Thanks for bringing that up.
Yeah.
So it's basically what I'm trying to do is, I've noticed like there's like this gap in therapy between play therapy, which is very effective for very young folks, you know, and then talk therapy, which starts to be useful. I mean, this is a real ballpark estimate, but like around age 15.
Okay.
A little earlier for girls.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I noticed, like, it's like, well, I had like all these clients who were like 11, 12, that kind of age, and like, they didn't want to do play therapy because they don't want to be treated like children.
Right.
And it's like a little embarrassing for them. But they also just like, they couldn't really hold like a serious conversation for that long. They just don't have like the emotional resources to be in
insights
that.
yet.
Yeah, they're not even necessarily thinking in that way.
Yeah.
Right. So I was thinking was like, doing like sort of a structured group game might be a lot easier for that age group. So it's in person. A lot of these kids, especially now, are like, half their life is spent online playing like Fortnite or probably not even World of Warcraft anymore.
I just heard about Fortnite. It's all the rage.
Oh, people are going crazy for it. PUBG. I hear about a lot of stuff from my clients, so I'm like, oh, that game sounds pretty fun. But anyway,
the point is they're spending a lot of time online.
Yeah,
and not in person.
And so, like, a lot of their skills for relation for holding relations are around games. So I was like, okay, put him in a room with a game, right, with other people. So it's like a half step down from that, because like, you know, tons of parents, and I'm a little split on this because I think just Gen Z is inheriting a very different world. But, you know, lots of folks are extremely nervous about like screen addiction among that age group.
Yeah.
So it's like, get them away from the screen for a little while, teach them how to make eye contact, you know, how to share with people in person, you know, how to talk and shake hands and all that good stuff, you know, like put them in meet space, give them a game to kind of moderate and something that they can sort of, you know, if once they get a little too emotionally blown out, they can just delve back into the game, right? And they can just take that seriously for a little while until they have sort of self-regulated and they come back to a relationship.
Yeah.
Right? And just sort of give them a space that's moderated by like a trained therapist where they can talk about things that are happening in their lives, right? But when that gets too hot, they've got somewhere else to go.
Yeah. And I mean, I played a little bit of Dungeons and Dragons or something similar to it when I was in middle school and high school, and I remember you have to work together a fair amount.
Yeah.
Usually, it's not, you know, it's not like everyone for themselves and you can just make all these rational decisions. A lot of it is about what you do together. So I imagine that teamwork element probably brings up some of their patterns in ways that are kind of like in a sub-therapeutic way or, you know, subtly therapeutic way where you can kind of do interventions within the game.
Well, absolutely. So like that's like the like, you know, funnest part in some ways is, you know, every aspect of the game is played in the imagination, but the shared imagination. So it's like they have to make a character. Well, guess what? That character, you know, 9 times out of 10 is going to represent some, you know, great desire of theirs for who they want to be.
Yeah.
Or something they're afraid of. You know, it can go either way.
Yeah.
Then they have to work together. Like, you know, I've had a kid who wanted to be the leader. He just came into the room like, I'm gonna run this shit.
Okay.
You know, and that didn't work at first, right? So you know, at the start of session with a bunch of people he's never met, it's like we're just getting started, and he's like, "All right, let's go. You know, we're gonna go to this cave and we're gonna fight these monsters," and everyone else is like, "No, we're not." You know, they just hit the brakes on that idea, and so that became very difficult for him because, you know, for whatever reason, he had developed this attitude where like he was most safe when he was in the leadership role.
Yeah.
Right, and he couldn't be in that, at least not right away.
Yeah.
And he had to go through a lot of pain and difficulty where he would try and run things, and they just wouldn't let him because the other kids didn't respect him yet.
Yeah, yeah.
And of course, the cool thing was, by the end, he was the leader, right? Because he'd actually figured out, like, oh, like, it's not enough to want to be it. You have to earn it.
Yeah, yeah.
And so the kids, you know, like, by sort of facing his own demons, you know, the other kids in the room were able to, like, come to see his strengths, like, without all the bluster involved.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So, I mean, that's one where, you know, that's just a win for group therapy. Like, I didn't even have to do anything.
Right,
besides assemble the team. But there's, like, you know, an example with, like, I had one kid who was very impulsive. And so, like, I set up this, you know, I had them in a dungeon. I set up this trap where it was like they walked into this new room and there was a lever, you know, right in the middle of the room. And he's like, all right, I run over there and I just pull the lever. And so the result of that was all the walls started, you know, slowly crushing in, like that scene in like Indiana Jones, you know?
Okay, yeah.
And so, you know...
Complex cave.
Right. Well, it's a dungeon. Let's show some respect.
Okay.
But so, like, you know, it just set this immediate, like, cause and effect reaction that he could see right away that was, like, a problem, but also it's just happening in a game. So it's not like, it doesn't, like, you know, totally freak him out to have to deal with it. Whereas, like, well, you didn't turn in your homework, so you failed this class.
Right.
Kids have a really difficult time actually learning that lesson because it's so intense for them.
Yeah.
Right? You do it in the game, it's like, oh, I shouldn't just do these things without examining them. Yeah, so it like gave him an opportunity to just like learn gently,
Yeah,
you know?
yeah. I can just imagine you doing such a great job with them. I mean, because yeah, as you said, you can relate, and I can imagine you getting into the game, but still having that ability to let them make some mistakes and just give them some guidance along the way.
Yeah, well, again, it's all about guidance, not protection.
Yeah, yeah,
You know, how do you let them make mistakes, and how do you help them learn from it, and keep them reasonably safe while doing it. You know, Dungeons and Dragons is pretty safe, as it turns out.
I remember dying a lot.
Yeah, and you're still here today.
Yes, that's the beauty of it. So, I imagine that a lot of the people who are actually reaching out to you for your younger population are the parents. And do you work with the parents at all, or?
I do.
Yeah. What does that look like?
It depends, obviously. But the way I like to do it is if I'm working with any kind of tween or teen,
Okay.
basically anyone under 18. I'm doing check-ins with the family at least once a month.
Okay. Where they actually come in, or you just give them a call, kind of thing?
It depends.
Yeah.
You know, depending on the case. Sometimes it'll just be a call. Sometimes I really like to do like family sessions.
Yeah.
Like, let's get everyone in here and figure this out. Yeah. Sorry, I'm just remembering I'm doing some of that right now with a client of mine. I'm trying to decide if I want to talk about it. But no.
Yeah, let's steer clear.
Steer away
yeah,
from the
if it's-
confidentiality.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. But yeah, I think it's absolutely critical when working with young people to work with the parents, because usually what's going on is like the kids are responding to some kind of generations old parenting style that just doesn't match with them.
Yeah.
Right? Or something's going on in the home that doesn't make sense to them, or they don't understand, they don't feel safe. And, in a young mind, not feeling safe at home gets blown way out of proportion very quickly. Like that, I mean, that is psychologically life-threatening.
Yeah.
Right? This is attachment theory,
Yeah.
which I won't get into, but,
No.
look it up. Sorry.
That's a big one. Yeah.
Yeah, but they have what are usually minor problems that feel like the world is ending and cause real problems for them. And if you can just work with the parents, get everybody talking to each other, you can actually, make some very simple changes at home that are usually not that hard to do.
Right.
That really, really help, And it's just, I'm sure I don't have to tell anyone, like, the transition from, like, childhood to teenage is really hard, and, like, no parent is ever ready to have, like, the thing, that they've put all of their heart and soul into for the last 12 years suddenly tell them, like, shut up, I hate you, you ruined my life. You just can't, right, there's no way to, like, react to that cool.
Yeah.
It hurts too much.
Yeah.
So it's like, okay, how do we foster better communication? Like, so sometimes it's like we get everyone in there and have the team be like, I don't hate you. When I say that, I just need some space. Like, it's like, wow, that was incredible.
Yeah,
like the
that's huge.
smallest little nudge, and you see like the look on the parents' faces. They go from like, just like these deeply furrowed, craggy, mountain-faced people to like relief.
The relief.
And that's huge, because it's hard to raise kids. Parents need help too.
Yeah, right. I know there's so many things that we need to be all sorts of certified for to do at all, especially in this profession. We've got all sorts of licenses and stuff, but there's not much of a parenting license out there. And
No.
yeah, there's really not much training, and so.
Yeah.
And as you know, we work a lot with the parents of our adolescent and young adult clients.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'm really grateful for what you do, and thanks so much for coming in and telling us a little bit about it.
Oh yeah,
And I
it's
know
my pleasure.
we could go on forever.